Hello and welcome to the Advanced TRS presentation. Just because there are so many people that ask what it is, I'm going to try and go through and answer some simple questions for people, let people know what it's all about, how it was invented, what it's used for, what it does, what it doesn't do, and just kind of give a brief overview on the entire thing so that people aren't so in the dark about what this is and how to use it and what they can expect from it. The first thing people usually ask is, what is Advanced TRS? Advanced TRS stands for Advanced Toxin Removal System, that it comes from a company called Coseva. The simplest way to put what is Coseva's Advanced TRS, what is it? It's just a simpler, safer, easier way to start detoxifying things like heavy metals and other toxins like pesticides, herbicides, ammonias, a whole host of different things that shouldn't be in the body to just help it work a little bit more efficiently, take a little bit of a burden off the body, and that's what the TRS is. The first thing to disclaim before we go anywhere is that Advanced TRS does not treat or cure any disease. If you hear anybody out there that claims they're using TRS cured somebody's autism or fibromyalgia or it cured their eczema, or none of that is the case in any way, shape, or form. TRS does not treat or cure any disease. However, if you have you yourself or somebody you know that has autism or the fibromyalgia or the Lyme disease, could the TRS be beneficial to use? Absolutely. But it does not cure or treat those diseases. So we want to make that very, very clear before we go anywhere with this. Don't be expecting miracles like if anybody says that. That is not the case. It is extremely helpful. I can tell you that personally, that I am so glad that I found it and use it. However, it doesn't treat or cure any diseases. The FDA does that, and they do that with their poisons that they use. Let the FDA treat and cure diseases, and let's let the rest of the world that wants to get better use different ways to support their health instead. A little bit about who invented the Advanced TRS is a guy named Dr. Tracy Holford. He had an older formula that was called the TRS Clear. I don't recommend anybody uses that one. That old formula is obsolete. It was a nice product at the time. However, once the Advanced TRS came out, it is a much, much better product. So I personally don't recommend anybody uses the Clear formula, even if it is cheaper. The company still has it around because they still have supply of it. But the Advanced TRS is much better than the TRS Clear. There's Dr. Tracy Holford, who invented it, was an ex-NASA scientist, brilliant, brilliant man. You can see he's got 5 different PhDs, from inorganic chemistry to biochemistry to nuclear physics and organic chemistry. So the guy that invented this, very, very smart. He's also got a PhD in theology and philosophy. He's also much like a good way to put it would be a Carl Sagan of both science and spirituality, because when you put the two together, they are absolutely beautiful. So really interesting, really neat guy who invented it. A little bit about his work history and experience. He worked with Touchstone Essentials from 2011 to the present. He did a private practice as well from 1991 to the present, but the biggest one that most people will want to take a look at is he worked for the Department of Defense in 1975 to 1991. We can't exactly disclose what projects he worked on, obviously for security reasons and because he doesn't feel like ending up in Guantanamo Bay. I can't say, but I would like to. There are many people out there that will find that this is very important and is something to pay attention to, because while I can't come right out and say everything, I would like everybody to note that he worked for the Department of Defense for a reason, and this TRS and the things along that line were part of it, and that's the most that I'm able to talk about it. But so for those of you that were curious about it, pay attention to that Department of Defense area there, because it is important. What exactly this TRS is it is a zeolite, or it's clinoptilolite, that basically it is a special type of crystal that has an affinity for positively charged toxins in the body and in the environment. So a lot of times that's what people will use, is they'll take a clay version of this stuff that only works in the upper digestive tract. What makes the TRS so different is it's this nanoparticle size bound to a water molecule. So when it's nanoparticle size, it means it's a very, very small size. And this little teeny size allows it to bind to this water molecule. Now it can then cross the blood-brain barrier, get into nervous tissue, and into all of these essential organs, because it can now go anywhere that water can go. Standard zeolites and these other ways of detoxifying heavy metals aren't able to do this, and that's what makes this Advanced TRS so neat, is that unlike naturally occurring zeolites and clinophthalolites, they are contaminated with heavy metals naturally just in the environment, because that's what these things do, is they suck up heavy metals and bind to them, and that's where the contamination comes from. That's why the TRS is grown in a lab at this nanoparticle size, to make sure that there is none of this heavy metal contamination. So it's great at helping remove heavy metals like lead, mercury, aluminum, arsenic, radioactive material. It'll also help increase the levels of vital nutrients like iron and calcium, because a lot of times your body will have to use these as buffers to be able to bind and move these heavy metals around. And it's very taxing on the body. So when the body doesn't have to do that, it can much more effectively detoxify heavy metals. Really neat part is, in every bottle there is an average surface area of 4.8 million square feet. So that's the surface area. Basically take and lay out 4.8 million square feet. That's how much surface area there is to bind to toxins within a single bottle of this stuff. To give you an idea how much that is, a standard Olympic-sized swimming pool is somewhere around 13,500 square feet. So Coseva's TRS, this advanced TRS, each bottle, if we take and do the math and do 4.8 million square feet divided by about 13,500, it's the equivalent of almost 357 Olympic-sized swimming pools is the surface area that it has the ability to absorb toxins from, which is extremely impressive. Just to basically reiterate, like I talked about before, standard zeolites only work in the upper digestive tract and are contaminated with heavy metals naturally. This is just the way it works and the way the environment works, and that's why this solution was created, to make sure they could ensure absolute purity with this nano-sized zeolite, so it can get around the body, into the brain, the nervous tissue, and all these other hard-to-reach places that other products can't. Basically, here's a little molecular diagram of what these little zeolites look like. They're like little soccer balls that can bind to these heavy metal toxins, and basically heavy metals, other toxins, basically just bind to these toxins and either trap them inside of the zeolite cage, or the zeolite will just bind to the area on the toxin that has the charge that would interact with the body and be pathogenic. So it neutralizes the charge, binds onto it, sticks to it like a little magnet, so that the body can just push it out of the body and excrete it without it causing damage on the way out, because the body is negatively electrically charged. So anytime we get a toxin in there that's positively charged, it likes to stick in the body, just like two magnets, a plus and a minus, attract each other. It's the same concept of how this TRS works. This little soccer ball like cage in binding to toxins. The neat thing is this TRS, what it does is it just solves a lot of problems, because it's such a multitude of complex problems. If you do like the Cutler chelation protocol, or all these other ways to detoxify heavy metals, you have to do juicing of chlorella, spirulina, you've got to have cilantro, you've got to have MSM, you've got to have vitamin C, you've got to have ALA. All these other things that are normally required to be able to get these metals out of the body are usually painful. They're a pain in the butt. The TRS just makes it really, really easy and solves a lot of problems. Let's talk about an article from Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, who I'm actually very fond of and love the guy's information. I think he does a great job, love all the stuff he puts out, and he did a wonderful article called Zeolite Myths Busted. Basically what he did is he did lab tests of different zeolites and bentonite clays, and he went in and he put them in hydrochloric acid, and he had it shake back and forth to mimic the effects of stomach acid for a long time. And what he found was that so many of these zeolites that are naturally occurring out there that people sell to detoxify heavy metals actually have really high levels of heavy metal contamination. He also found that the metals weren't exactly bound to these zeolites, which he's actually right on all of these fronts, because natural occurring zeolites and bentonite clays people use to detox heavy metals are naturally contaminated with heavy metals to an extent. Some people do wash them with acids to be able to get these heavy metals out, like very, very potent acids. The problem is this ruins the quantum structures of the cage, and it can't get all the metals out to begin with. And like he talks about in some of the articles, he was showing that in the process outside of the body that he did, the zeolite wasn't able to bind to all of the heavy metals, which he's also correct, because when these zeolites get into the body, because they're a crystal, they pick up something that's called the piezoelectric effect. So it piggybacks on the electric charge of your body, and these crystals in your body start emitting their own electric charge, which then attracts toxins even faster. So doing the external tests of trying to get the zeolites to absorb heavy metals outside of the body won't work the same as it does in the body, because of the way crystals respond with a piezoelectric effect and how it will interact with your electric field, and then there's also how it will interact with your consciousness. Is yet an entirely another long topic for a different day. But just to let you know that if you do come across this article from Mike Adams, he is actually right. Zeolites do contain high levels of lead, aluminum, and many other heavy metals, because that's just what happens with naturally occurring zeolites. The best way to put this is just don't get stuck doing it the old-fashioned way. It's obsolete. You don't need to do it the hard way anymore. And many times, too, the hard way can be doing more harm than good, especially if you've got people or children who getting supplements in them is impossible. That is what the TRS is for, because it tastes like nothing but water. And we have even had people have reports that just spraying it topically on their child or themselves has worked for them, as well as even taking it internally, which I can't make any claims on that one because I don't have any studies or anything to prove that. I, however, have a propensity to agree with people that say if you use it topically, it still works too. So you could test it for yourself, that if you have a child who won't let you spray it in their mouth, it doesn't taste like anything. It tastes like pure water. But sometimes, even for some kids that have sensory issues, that's too much for them. You can always try it topically then. Now on to a little bit more fun topic. We're going to talk about emotions, emotional toxicity, and how that relates to physical toxicity. When your body is physically toxic with heavy metals, you can get symptoms from anxiety to PTSD, paranoia, anger, depression. Anger usually comes from radioactive material, will make you excessively angry. Arsenic toxicity will make you very, very paranoid. Mercury toxicity will give you the echolalia, basically kids that or yourself will repeat something you've seen on a TV show without even thinking about it. You get codependency because of lack of self-esteem and low testosterone. Mercury interferes with testosterone in men, so they won't feel as manly, so they get this codependency thing, the spontaneously mimicking others or fictional characters. You can get the mad behavior. Mercury also displays the mercury toxicity. That's why they call it the Mad Hatter. It can literally make you act insane, because hatters back in the old days in like the 1800s would put mercury on the felt of all the brims of the hats. Being exposed to that mercury all the time basically caused them to go clinically insane, hence the term mad as a hatter. So there's so many different things that can come from a form of metal toxicity, or even just physical toxicity in general, that will cause your emotions to go absolutely crazy. It will lock in, PTSDs and negative emotions. These metals will get into the brain in between the nerve junctures and basically lock these cycles on of the self-destructive tendencies, or these negative emotions just get stuck in by these heavy metals, because they lock these nerve signals on, because heavy metals and other toxins have a positive charge. The brain has a negative charge, so it migrates into that area, basically leaves that nerve locked on. You can't fall asleep well enough to be able to prune off these bad habits and old neural pathways that don't need to be there. So this is a big thing to understand, that heavy metal toxicity and your emotional health runs really, 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 really high in hand together. That if you've got an emotional toxicity, you've probably got some form of physical toxicity that's there as well, that is coupling together with it. Basically, here's a good way to put it too. Take a look at healthy people. People that eat well and exercise and do all the things they're supposed to, they're always in a good mood because they feel good. When you feel good, your brain works differently because you're not toxic. Once again, starting off with, I make no claims of cures or any means whatsoever of the TRS, but these children's developing brains are exceedingly sensitive to heavy metal toxicity and other toxic exposures, which can result in sensory processing disorders, speech delays, motor function deficits, as well as parasitic overgrowth. Motor function gets in the cerebellum and the motor control cortex, so even though the brain is trying to send the signal, the nerve signal isn't getting through from the brain to the body. So now your motor function is off, because there's basically blocks in there from heavy metals that can get in and disrupt the neurological communication. You've got sensory processing disorders. If your brain is full of metals, the nerve signals can be too strong because they build up this metal. To get past this metal toxicity, your nerves have to send stronger signals to be able to bring in, here's what the sensory stuff is going in from the environment. It can stress them out too much to it's too much to handle because they can't process what's already there. Parasites, parasitic overgrowth, that parasites will eat heavy metals and basically bind them and stick them to their body so that they hide from the immune system, because if these parasites are coated in heavy metals, now your body can't effectively deal with the parasites. So as you start getting rid of these heavy metals, your body can more effectively start dealing with the parasites. Candida overgrowth is a huge symptom of heavy metal toxicity. There's just so many chronic ear infections. That is a gigantic one, side effect of metal toxicity, because in the back of the, basically the back of the head and these eustachian tubes and this inner ear canal, there's a gigantic lymph system, and the lymph is what carries these metal toxicity away. If it's full of metal toxicity, that causes a candida overgrowth or a fungal overgrowth, which leads to these chronic ear infections. Parents basically read your vaccine insert where they say ear infections are an adverse reaction and side effect of vaccination. I'm just going to let you put 2 and 2 together, but pick up a vaccine insert and go look for chronic ear infections, and you'll probably put 2 and 2 together if your child is having chronic ear infections all the time. I myself, as a vaccine injured child, had that all the time and had tubes multiple times and chronic ear infections constantly. So I know all about how that works. Also, the problem is too, this can cause your heavy metals can cause brain fog, the poor memory, the mood disorders, the sleep dysfunction. That's a big one, is this not being able to sleep. Autoimmune disorders come from heavy metal toxicity. And a giant one is a severe decrease in imagination, imaginative play. When these heavy metals are in there, it disrupts the pineal gland, which disrupts dreaming, which disrupts sleep and awake cycles, which also destroys imagination, because that is a higher level brain function, imagination. Heavy metals also will drastically affect spinal alignment, because basically your body has an electric field that will run up and down it with the nerves. It's a negative electric charge, goes up and down, tells your spine where to stay, how to stay straight, all these other things. If you get in this charge, it's a negative electric charge. When you get positive charges in there from toxicities and heavy metals, that disrupts that electrical frequency going up and down, telling your spine where to be, the nervous communication between the organs and the brain. So many times you can get problems with an organ, but there's nothing wrong with the organ. There's a problem with its ability to communicate up to the brain. And so chiropractic, people that are going to chiropractors will understand exactly what I'm talking about here. Anybody that gets chiropractic adjustments, really think about the TRS and adding it in there. So when your chiropractor realigns you where you're supposed to be, the toxicity that's released can be mopped up by the TRS. We can also talk about the stress function that gets in there of the vagus complex, which is a very, very long video that I have for a different day. But basically, these heavy metals can lock on a stress response that causes so many problems, from just stress, anxiety, inability to release these negative emotions. It can cause the autoimmune disorders, disrupted gut health, the vagus. When this stress response gets locked on, you're locked in basically a physical stress response so that the body can't shift over to the immune response instead. So there's so many issues that can come from heavy metals, basically from alignment to organ dysfunction to neurological miscommunication, or you can even just get into spinal alignment because these nerves can't communicate. It interferes with that electronegative charge that runs up and down the body and neutralizes it, so you basically mess up your spinal alignment from toxicity. One of my favorite aspects to talk about is spirituality and toxicity in heavy metals. TRS, I love using the TRS for enhanced spirituality and dreaming. So anybody that does yoga, that does the meditation, that does any form of these spirituality-based practices, the TRS is something to really, really think about, because Roundup, aluminum, fluoride, all these other heavy metals have a gigantic affinity for the pineal gland. It's one of the most vulnerable glands in the entire body to poison, heavy metal poisoning and other toxicities. What this pineal gland does, it's many times called the third eye or the seat of the soul, where your higher self communicates to the physical body through visions and dreamings, colors, and basically what ends up happening when this pineal gland gets disrupted, this disrupts your body's ability to make melatonin, which regulates your sleep and awake cycles. So if you can't make melatonin naturally, now you've got to supplement with it because your pineal gland is messed up and can't make its own melatonin, so you have to supplement with it because of the physical toxicity. The other thing is there's a well-known molecule, or maybe not so well-known molecule, known as dimethyltryptamine, which is known as the mother of all hallucinogens. But the thing is, your body makes this, and it's the chemical responsible for making you dream at night. So When your pineal gland is messed up, you can't effectively make this dimethyltryptamine, which you are supposed to make as a body to put you into this dream state, to give you the dreams and visions. This third eye that's inside of your head is actually a third eye. It has, even though it lives in perfect darkness, it has rods and cones, just like your other two eyes that see your environment around it. So you can ask people who are good at meditating. They'll be able to close their eyes and meditate, and they'll be able to see different colors, geometric shapes, patterns, and a whole host of other things because their pineal gland is functioning, not calcified and not filled with toxicity. So those of you on the spiritual path that want to kind of listen to your higher self and these other things, cleaning out the pineal gland is of utmost importance. So if you're into that sort of stuff, the TRS is something you really want to think about. I can tell you that for sure. The next thing to talk about is heavy metals and your endocrine toxicity. So endocrine is basically your hormones. It can be testosterone, pregnenolone, estrogen, insulin. It can also be cortisol, human growth hormone, your pituitary, your thyroid, as well as your adrenaline is the biggest one. So we're going to look over at the adrenal glands. Heavy metal toxicity really disrupts the adrenal glands. So now you start looking into the adrenal fatigue area, and once you get adrenal fatigue, your thyroid goes out of disorder because the thyroid and adrenals are linked together. That when your adrenals get low, then your thyroid has to pick up the slack. So if you've got adrenal fatigue, then your thyroid goes out. And so we're basically talking all about the different ways that heavy metals can induce basically hormone disruption because they disrupt the organs, the glands, and the formations of these hormones in these different glands. Basically, here's a really good way to look at mercury alone. Mercury absolutely destroys your adrenal glands. So if you've got mercury toxicity, your adrenal glands are going to go out, making you feel just completely low energy, always tired. It's going to make it so that you get the adrenal fatigue, which is then going to cause your thyroid to fail after that. We've got fluoride in the water that also displaces iodine, so the thyroid doesn't function as well because it gets displaced with fluoride in there. So, I mean, you can basically take a look at all the different things that can happen from just a mercury toxicity disorder that goes on. I know all about this from my mom's mercury fillings that she had replaced, and then the mercury fillings I've got. And so I know all about these different things that we can talk about: the headaches, the hearing loss, the hyperactivity, the immune function dysfunction, the insomnia, the kidney damage, the loss of self-control, and the mood swings. These are all things that can happen from heavy metal toxicity. Here's just another couple of things, symptoms of toxicities, and we look over into the why am I always tired, the MTHFR, the missing link. Like I talked about, if you've got this MTHFR mutation, you don't get rid of toxins nearly as well, especially heavy metals. So now all of a sudden, are you mercury toxic, which is destroying your adrenal function, which then destroys your thyroid, which basically turns your energy levels to crap and you're always cold. And you can get a whole host of different things that happen from this. Once again, I'm making no claims anywhere. I'm just letting you know these are some of the things that can happen from heavy metal toxicity that so many people ignore. And the problem is just a hair test or a urine test or a blood test will not really give you a good picture of what form of metal toxicity you've got. And that's what makes metal toxicity such a problem, is there is no real good way to know do you have it or not. It's just something you kind of have to try, a safe way to get rid of heavy metals to see if that helps you in any way, shape, or form. The usage rate roughly for advanced TRS is about 1 spray for every 30 pounds for kids, adults, pets. My 3-year-old is now 3-year-old, has been on it for about a little bit over a year, and we started him off at about 2 to 3 sprays, and he takes about 5 a day right now. It's always best with children or small animals or anything. Start very slowly. You can always work up. I've taken an entire bottle of TRS in a day and had absolutely no problem with it. But don't do this, number one, because it's just not necessary. That's way too much. And number two, don't waste your money on that. And number three, it's not recommended to do that. So don't do it. I just did it to test it out for safety, to say if I'm going to recommend this to people, I have to make sure that it's safe. So I took a whole bottle of it in a day just to see what would happen to me. The only thing that happened is I didn't need to sleep because I was really energetic, which was awesome because I got a lot of stuff done. But that's not a sustainable thing to do. And I also don't recommend doing that. So for kids, start them off with 1 spray a day, work up slowly, try to do 1 spray for every pound or every 30 pounds. I do have a 4-week-old infant that I'm using it with, that I'm just doing about a half a spray twice a day. So remember, just always go slow. You can always work up to it. Start with the 1 spray for every 30 pounds. You can always do more, especially adults. If you want to do more than 1 spray for every 30 pounds, you certainly can. It's just whether this is cost effective to you or not. more than what it appears more than 20 sprays a day just seems to be an excess that doesn't do any good, because there's only so much. At a certain point, you just reach where it's not beneficial to take anymore. It seems to be about the 20 sprays a day is kind of where it tops out. Now this, I have no scientific proof or anything. This is just personal experience from working with it for a couple of years of finding more than 20 sprays a day is just not, there's no reason. So anyway, try to stick, most people do 5 sprays a day for your average adult. 150, 180 pounds, most people do 5 sprays a day, and that's what they do. But you can always do more. Just be aware that the emotional detox may come out real strong, or it may not. Every person's different. So there's the rough idea of how you want to do it. Here's some of the things we can expect. Remember, this isn't going to be for everybody. These are not promises, and I'm not saying these are absolutely going to happen. These are just some of the things that have been reported with it, especially with children. The increased speech due to vaccines and the aluminum adjuvants accumulating, they really get into the motor cortex and into the Wernicke and Broca's area and really disrupt the communication and the speech abilities. A lot of people do report the improved memory, motor function increase, the joint pain decrease. I have met more than a few people for their seizure support. It has been wonderful. I'm not saying it cures seizures. I am saying, however, that it can be wonderful support. Emotional detox, big one. A lot of people notice the emotional detox. So if you're going to start TRS, it is really beneficial to start a yoga or meditation program or prayer or something to help, especially because women seem to get it more than men, because they're not saying this the wrong way, they're more in touch with their emotions, not more emotional, but more in touch with them. So they'll notice these things coming up. Men have a tendency to just ignore it no matter what happens in most cases. The increased energy is usually one that people will notice after a little while too. A lot of people for the first little bit will not have as much because you actually sleep. So now that you're actually sleeping, you actually go to sleep, stay asleep, and your body has to catch up for a little bit. Intensified dreaming, huge one when that pineal gland starts detoxing. Holy cow, awesome the way the dreams can get going. Lymphatic support, because when you clean the metals out of the lymph system, that just frees up so much more of the body to be able to do its other things that it needs to do when its lymph system isn't so overburdened. A lot of other people, especially myself, decrease supplement use because you don't need all these other supplements, because the TRS is just helping clean up so much of this stuff. Your body doesn't require so many nutrients because the body's just cleaner. Improved by digestive health is a big one, because heavy metals, they get detoxified out through the digestive tract and through the kidneys and the bladder and everything. Problem is when they go to when you go number 2 and you poop out the heavy metals, these metals have a tendency to get stuck down in that lymph system, down in the digestive tract. So what that'll do is end up causing biofilm overgrowth in the digestive tract, because the heavy metals that were supposed to be pooped out get stuck in the lymph system, which causes the pathogenic overgrowth and biofilm growth. So there are many people report that their digestive system, when these metals go away, then the biofilms get released and their digestive health cleans up. So on the side effects, or things that could be not so desirable, first one I put is the foul stools or poop is from the detox. Is as these metals clear out, these biofilms many times will start following out after it. It's not that the TRS is clearing out the biofilms, the TRS is clearing out the metals, then the body clears the biofilms. So people can get headaches from the emotions. As these emotions start to surface and need to be released, you can get headaches from that. The tiredness for a sleep reset, basically when you start actually sleeping again, because you're actually getting into a deep sleep, your body's going to take a little bit of a recovery time. Extra urination, because people are needing, basically you got to pee out all these things, and that's one of the big ways TRS detoxes things. It doesn't burden the kidneys, but you end up peeing out a lot of these metals. You might get a temporary rash, especially kids that have been highly vaccinated. These, as the adjuvants come out, we also release the antigens that get bound to these. So retroviruses and viruses love to stick to heavy metals. That's these aluminum adjuvants. So as these adjuvants come out, then the antigens many times come out afterwards, and so that can cause just basically a temporary rash as a detox thing. So just go slow. That's all there is to it. Anxiety from the emotional detox, absolutely, that can be a thing. As these emotions start coming up, especially for women or anybody that's anxiety prone, till you get rid of these emotions, you're going to have more anxiety. Also, extra sweat. That was a huge one for me. I would soak the bed in sweat because I was very toxic. So I was a 300-pound alcoholic that smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day, drank a gallon of Diet Coke, and drank 2 pots of coffee a day. So I was obviously very toxic. So that's, not everybody reports that, but I sure had it. So that's something you could expect. And these are just sort of the different things to look for. So if you're ever in doubt, just go slow. If you need to stop for a little bit, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not going to hurt you to stop and then start up again at any time. So feel free to do that. Just, don't overdo it. Don't push it. Just take it slow, take it steady. That always wins the race. Be like the turtle, the slow and steady, because you can't speed your healing. Just there is no way to do it. If you try to force speed your healing or your detoxes or everything, you're just going to make it worse, and that's all that's going to happen. So go slow and just enjoy yourself. So finally is the last slide to talk about. We covered a whole bunch of different things, and I'm going to reiterate that the TRS doesn't cure or treat any disease whatsoever. What I am saying it does, however, is that it solves a lot of problems really easily, really cost effectively, versus I have tried doing a heavy metal detox, and the amount of money that I have to spend on other supplements to get the same results that I do just using the TRS to deal with these things. I save so much money using the TRS versus doing all this other stuff. The greatest part is this is simple. So many people are looking for a way to start changing their health, and it's overwhelming. You don't know where to start. You don't know what to do. It's hard, or it's expensive, or it's time consuming. That's what makes this TRS so great, is it's really not that expensive when you weigh what it actually does for you. And the biggest other thing is it's really, really easy. It solves a lot of problems. You start off with, I tell most people start at 1 spray a day, but if you're gung-ho, start off at 2 sprays in the morning and 3 at night. My 3-year-old's been on the TRS for about a year and a half, and he does 5 sprays a day, absolutely no problem. I've taken an entire bottle of it in a day or two just to see what happens to me, and I had absolutely no issues with it whatsoever. Granted, I have been on it for like about a year and a half myself too, so that probably makes a difference. But if I can take a whole bottle of it in a day or two and I don't have any problems, that goes to show I always test dummy stuff. I always guinea pig myself before I tell anybody else to do anything, saying, no, I'm going to put myself through it. I'm going to take way too much of it just to see what happens to me before I tell somebody to use it on themselves or their children. I want to make sure it's safe for them, so that's why I did a stupid amount of it just to see what happened. And honestly, I felt great. I actually just didn't need to sleep for quite a long time because I was really energetic. It was pretty intense. It was pretty cool. So, there's so many problems, but there is one thing that solves a lot of those problems. This is just a solution to really help start moving you in the direction you want to move, because it's simple, it's easy, it's affordable, and it's going to save you a bunch of money on all of your other stuff and get you moving in the direction you want to go. So the simplest way to put this is detox smarter, not harder. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your energy. Start with something that's simple, that's easy, that's affordable, and has a whole host of potential benefits. You'll have to try it for yourself to see if you find anything from it. There are a few people that don't notice anything, but the vast, vast majority of people could not be happier that they tried it, and it has made their lives so much better, and their children's lives. I can't even tell you some of the stories that I've heard, but I'm just saying, think about it. Work smarter, not harder. Detox smarter, not harder. And try the TRS, or at least think about it.